Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss what the Philadelphia Phillies should do with Bryson Stott, who's been majorly struggling at the plate. And I think the solution that's right for the team might not be the one that the fan base wants to hear. We'll break it down in today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space, sports talk radio at 97.5 The Fanatic here in Philadelphia for 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 years, and this is my third season as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's a free and easy way to say thank you for the content that I'm putting out. If you enjoy it, I would appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. Well, the sports, they start slowing down in the middle of the summer. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So where we start the episode today is a very interesting conversation. There needs to be more nuance with this than I think people are giving it. But it's a conversation that we've kind of towed around for a little bit now. It's time we fully have it because the Phillies, well, they're not playing great baseball right now. I talked in yesterday's episode about why I think they're still trending in the right direction compared to the slump that they were in, even though they've lost 3 straight, coming off those 3 straight losses to the Diamondbacks. But they could be playing better. They do need to explore options to make that happen. And Bryson Stott is one of the sore points in the Philadelphia Phillies lineup right now. It's kind of crazy where we've gotten to with Bryson Stott. But if you think about it, it's really not, is it? I mean, so Bryson Stott comes up last year. He's awesome, right? From Jump Street, he looks really, really good. He was in the conversation for a Gold Glove. He was in the conversation to hit above 300. I mean, if Luis Ariz didn't exist, you would have been talking about him in the batting title conversation last year, and you say, okay, great. Bryson Stott, solid hitter, maybe a top-of-the-lineup hitter at some point in his career. Great glove. He fits in perfectly at second base, a big part of that daycare group that makes this Phillies team so dangerous. It's not just the big-name guys. It's the fact that you brought up a couple guys from in your own system that have played well. Alec Bohm. You look at guys, some pitchers, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez. You look at, of course, Bryson Stott, who we're talking about, Johan Rojas a little bit here and there, not quite to the same level as those other guys, but there is a balance of youth with this team. That's why the daycare exists. Brandon Marsh, not one of your own, but he's another younger guy that you have under team control. So those are the guys that, like, they are important to this team. They balance out this roster. You can't just buy 9 great players and expect to be able to handle that with the luxury tax and pay all those guys. You need to have the Bryson Stotts of the world be huge for you. And he's been really, really rough this year. Like, his numbers are not befitting of the hitter that he should be, the player that he should be. He just overall has been a disappointment for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I'm not breaking any news to anybody with that. If you've watched any Philadelphia Phillies baseball this year, you know he's been struggling. But the team has played well enough over the course of the season that it hasn't really been a huge focal point. And then they started slumping. But even in the slump, like the major part of this Philly slump, it's been largely the team. It hasn't been an individual player. It's been a lot of individual players combining to make a really rough stretch. So even in the bad times, Bryson Stott got kind of covered up by the bigger name guys. But now as Bryce Harper starts hitting again and Kyle Schwarber stays hot and Nick Castellanos is continuing to put together a solid second half and Trey Turner is showing signs of coming out of it and being like a 300-plus caliber hitter again, like we saw for a lot of the season from him, your focus starts to shift to the margins. And those are the guys in the 6, 7, 8, 9 spots in the lineup that you're looking at saying, what can we do there, if anything, to get these guys right? And Bryson Stott has gotten a lot of time. He is still, for all intents and purposes, the starting second baseman of the Philadelphia Phillies. But we have discussed a platoon situation with him and Edmundo Sosa, who was great earlier on in the season coming in for an injured Trey Turner. And when we talked about that, it was more of a preemptive type of thing. Like, Stott hasn't been great. I still think he's going to get time, but we need to start considering the possibility that a platoon system is the right way to handle it. And you know what? The further along we get, obviously, the closer I get to saying you got to platoon Bryson Stott and Edmundo Sosa. But I'm still not there. And here's why. And they're going to be platooned. At this point, you kind of have to. You'd be negligent not to if you're the Philadelphia Phillies. But I want to see every opportunity Bryson Stott continue to be out there, because it comes down to this one simple fact. I believe it to be a fact. I guess that makes it an opinion, but I believe this to be truth about the Philadelphia Phillies. The best version of this baseball team has Bryson Stott playing second base, right? At their absolute peak, the best they can be. Bryson Stott, second baseman, gets you furthest. It's not Edmundo Sosa. And I love Edmundo Sosa. Like, I can't say enough great things about Edmundo Sosa. His ceiling, to me, is not as high as Bryson Stott's is. Their floor, I don't know. I'm not really worried about the floor, because ideally you have these guys playing well in October. If you don't, well, we know what happens. We saw it last year. We saw it the year before. You need you guys all playing well, basically, in the postseason to make noise. And the Phillies have been pretty good at that lately, outside of the NLCS last year. That keeps coming up, doesn't it? But here's why, right? Like, if you start giving Edmundo Sosa more playing time over Bryson Stott, you're not giving Stott a chance to work out of it. You're not taking the chance anymore that he could come out of this. And I know people are saying, well, it's been how many months? It's been basically the whole season. We're in early August now, or I guess close to mid-August. It's August 13th. Man, how the days fly. And Bryson Stott has not really shown any signs of coming out of it. And I get that. I do. And I don't want to say, well, I'm going to sink the Phillies' chances this year because I'm willing to invest that in Bryson Stott. Like, no, he's not more important than the team. And if this continues, and if you go for the next month and a half and you come down to the end of September and you're like, just nothing happening with Bryson Stott. He's still hitting low 200s and he's not showing any signs of breaking out this worst slump he's been in, where he's hitting below 100 in the past month, I think it is. Like, when I look at that, or at least since the start of August, I think it's below 100. I understand that a change may have to be made in full. But my argument is that you should give every player that you believe is going to be part of the best possible lineup for this team every possible opportunity to work out his struggles. You had this argument already, and I'm not saying they're the same player. I'm not saying it's the same thing, right? But similar. And I'll make the case. But Nick Castellanos, earlier on in the season, for the first 2-3 months of the season, he was terrible. Just absolutely miserable at the plate. Looked completely lost. And he was playing every single darn day in right field. And people were losing their minds. I remember the comments. You probably remember making the comments. And I don't think you were wrong to be upset with Nick Castellanos' performance. He was abysmal at the plate, was playing every day in right field, and people were like, well, why don't you do something else? Oh, you can't play anyone over Nick Castellanos? Come on, Rob Thompson. Pull your head out of your rear. You've got to play someone else in right field to give this team a chance. But they were playing really, really well at that point. And Rob Thompson said, well, I'm going to stick with a player that I know historically over the course of his career can be really, really good. I'm going to give him a chance to work out of it. And, hey, look at that. Nick Castellanos worked out of it. He's not going to win the MVP or the batting title or anywhere close to any of those awards, but he's become a solid player for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. He was an all-star last year. You gave him the chance. It paid dividends. Now, here's why it's different for Bryson Stott. One, Nick Castellanos, you didn't have another great option in right field. All of the outfielders stunk to start the season. That was the weakest spot of the Philadelphia Phillies lineup, roster, whatever you want to call it. The outfield was not productive. Second base, you do have a believable, productive option in Edmundo Sosa, who's shown this year that he can be very good when given the opportunity. So that's part of the reason it's different. The other part of the reason it's different is because Nick Castellanos has been a multi-time All-Star. He's been around for a long time. He is a bona fide major league proven hitter. You have a lot of data that tells you Nick Castellanos over the course of 162 is going to be an above average major league bat that you want in your lineup. For Bryson Stott, that doesn't exist. He hasn't been up long enough for you to have enough data to say, well, he's the hitter that we saw when he was hitting around 300. Like, no, we believe he can be. We know at his peak, at his best, that can be the player he is because we've seen him do it. But We don't know consistently the player that Bryson Stott's going to be. If you told me in 5 years, Nick Castellanos is still playing baseball, like all things equal, no injuries, no major, in 4 or 5 years, I believe Nick Castellanos is going to be largely the same hitter as he is now. Bryson Stott, he could be great. You could tell me he's a batting title, all-star second baseman, and I could believe that. You could tell me he is a guy that is nearly unplayable and hasn't been able to hit, never figured out lefties, and I'd be forced to believe it based on what I've seen these past couple months. So what I'm doing, though, is I'm going to try and afford him. I'm going to do everything I can to afford Bryson Stott the same opportunity I did Nick Castellanos. And that kind of lasts longer than just the first 3 months because Castellanos came out of it. No, you got to stick with that if you're going to use that strategy, and I still am. So the solution with Bryson Stott, you kind of got to keep running him out there, in my opinion, because if you don't, and it comes to the postseason, Edmundo Sosa every day at second base, I don't know that you're – see, it's crazy to say I don't know you're a World Series winning team because you should be able to carry the strength of this lineup with your star players, but I don't know that you're as good as you could be, and I think the Philadelphia Phillies are going to have to be quite close to as good as they can be to win the World Series. I don't know that you can get to that ceiling without Bryson Stott. The glove is not as good for Sosa. The overall hitting ability is not as good for Sosa. The power is probably better for Sosa a little bit. And he's not a bad baseball player. But I think overall, when Stott's at his best, he's better than Edmundo Sosa's best. And for me, as much as Stott's been struggling, I got to hope that I've got enough buffer to survive it. The team will pick it up in other areas, and star players will start to come out of their slumps so it doesn't look as stark the problems that Bryson Stott causes for this lineup when he's not going well. And I'm going to take the chance on him. That is what the Phillies should do with Bryson Stott. Status quo, keep things going, hope he comes out of it. And if he doesn't, well, you're going to have I'm looking at September 15th with 2 weeks left in the season to make that call and say, now we're going with Sosa. Until then, your starting second baseman's Bryson Stott. And every once in a while you get Sosa out there, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think confidence is important and I think ceiling is important. And that's just my opinion on the Philadelphia Phillies and their second baseman problem right now. Let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree, if I'm flat out crazy. I'd love to hear from you, but I think that's the right way to handle it. And I think that's an important part of this second half getting turned around, Stott figuring it out, or the Phillies figuring out something at second base. Coming up next, we're going to preview today's matchup with the Miami Marlins and the series in general. A short 2-game series. Should the Phillies take both? I'm not a big sweep guy, but 2-game series may have me in a little bit of a different mood. We'll talk about it coming up next. Oh, man, I got to tell you about my friends over at Ibotta. They're amazing because there's so many things you're going to buy over the course of the summer. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. I mean, you're going to buy a lot of those. And, there's so much money to be spent, and you don't want to stress about the cost. The price of everything's going up, folks. You need to find a way to save money or make money anywhere you can. And you should use Ibotta to get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn hundreds from things like groceries, to beauty supplies, to toys, all kinds of stuff. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That's a lot of extra change. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Other apps, they give you points, right? And it don't really amount to much. Ibotta, no, they get you cash back. You can withdraw it to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can save on over 2,400 brands, over 1,000 retailers, basically anywhere you can think of. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. So right now, go download Ibotta, and they're offering our listeners here on Locked On Phillies $5 just for trying Ibotta. You use the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register, and you go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app, and you start earning cash back. Again, use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. And one more time, I'm just going to remind you, make sure you use code LOCKEDONMLB. Also want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel because the summer games, well, they concluded. Baseball is the only regular season sport rolling right now. You got some preseason for football, but the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. It's that slow time of the year, this dog days of summer, and that might say, oh, well, I don't really have anything to bet on. Well, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers, not new customers, no, all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. All right, let's jump into this conversation about the series with the Miami Marlins, because you have a great opportunity here if you're the Philadelphia Phillies to take 2 games from a lowly division rival. I mean, when you look at the standings in the National League East, there's no secret as to who's doing well and who's doing poorly. The Marlins, 25 and a half games back of the Phillies. They are 31 games under 500, 44 and 75, just not great. The only team with less wins than the Miami Marlins in the major leagues is the Chicago White Sox. Now, the Rockies have the same amount of wins, but it's a bottom feeder team. And you really need a get-right series. So even though it's only 2 games, this should be an opportunity for the Philadelphia Phillies to take advantage of a much lesser team who sold off a lot of guys at the trade deadline. It's just the Marlins they're not up to snuff. And the Phillies, well, they better take care of business. You've got some great opportunity. And tonight, we're seeing the return of Taijuan Walker. Now, this is going to be interesting because I know how the fan base feels about Taijuan Walker, but I also know that Taijuan Walker is an upgrade over a bullpen game or Colby Allard. Like, he's a bona fide major league pitcher, even if you don't believe he's a good one. He's coming back. This is his first start off the injured list. It's been a while since we've seen Taijuan Walker throw. Part of that is encouraging because, like I said, he's an upgrade over what you've been putting out in that 5th spot in the rotation, especially with Ranger Suarez also missing time. But he can be a bit of a powder keg. He can have rough outings. He can go out there and give up 3, 4, 5 runs like it's nothing. And I hope we see a good version of Taijuan Walker. It's nice that he gets to face the Marlins, who are a .237 batting average team as a whole. They don't have a lot of power, only 109 home runs. I mean, their slugging percentage, .365. It's not great. And even though it looks solid, it's still with a lot of guys that are no longer on the team. Like, you're just not looking at a lot of potential. Jake Berger is leading the team in homers, average, and RBIs. They don't really have that much or any star power, especially after trading Jazz Chisholm to the Yankees. So maybe this is the right time for Taijuan Walker to make his return. He's also facing a pitcher, or I guess he's not facing him, but he's lined up against a pitcher that the Phillies offense will face that you should be able to take advantage of. Valente Belloso. Now, young pitcher. He's a guy that in his career has only thrown 20 2/3 innings pitched, and they're all this year. The rookie has not really figured out all that much, but he hasn't been terrible, right? He's got a 3.05 ERA. He has a 102 whip, so the numbers look solid, but you're not really looking at a guy that's going to have too much to show you that you shouldn't be able to handle if you're the Phillies. He's given up 2 home runs in 20 2/3 innings, so maybe this is an opportunity to go long. He can strike guys out, 19 Ks in 20 2/3 innings pitched, but he's a righty. I mean, the one thing you need to know, right? This is simply the baseline for pitchers. What number does the guy wear? And I know you might say, well, Taijuan Walker wears 99. That's super up there for a starter. Belloso wears number 83. Like, that's just a classic called this guy up number. He doesn't even have a picture on ESPN. I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I don't know enough about him to know if he's going to be a good pitcher one day at the major league level or not. What I know is right now, Valente Belloso should not cause problems for a Philadelphia Phillies offense that's star-studded, even though the Phillies are struggling. So that should be an opportunity for you to take care of business tonight. Tomorrow's game, which we're going to preview more in tomorrow's episode, is Tyler Phillips, who has been solid for the Phillies, against an undecided starter for the Marlins. Like, they barely put a rotation together. You should be able to, right? It would be disappointing if the Phillies do not take both games against the Marlins. This is going to be the week. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more coming up next. With 6 games, 2 against the Marlins, 4 against the Nationals. This is going to be the week that potentially is the panic button for me, or it's the ultimate like relief for the fan base of like, okay, now we've seen this team beat up on some bad teams. It's not going to completely make us feel better, but it'll put us in a much better mental spot. Like, if you're the Phillies, you have to beat the Marlins twice. You're so much better than this team. There's no reason you should drop a baseball game to this team. Coming back home, having a day off, needing these games, you should beat the brakes off the Miami Marlins. And if you don't, we're going to have another fun conversation about what in the world's going on with this team. But I think they're coming out of it. I'm standing by, like, I'm trusting my eyes. I'm trusting what I'm seeing this team do. I know they've lost 3 straight, but the feel that I'm getting, the look that I'm getting, I think this team is close to breaking out, and they've already started to come out of the bad part of the slump. I think they're on the rise. I think we see it tonight. The odds for tonight's game, the Phillies are going to be minus 200 favorites on the money line. It just shifted even more. They open at minus 175. So as we get closer to the game, the Phillies become more and more favored by Vegas. ESPN matchup predictor has them at a 62.2% chance to win. I mean, that's just, you got to win these games. And you got to win a lot of games this week. But it starts with a 2-game sweep of the Marlins, and that should be a get-right opportunity for the Philadelphia Phillies tonight. We're going to be talking about a win tomorrow. I'm not putting the guarantee on it because this team is too inconsistent right now to put a guarantee on, but I'll just say I do firmly believe that we're going to be talking about a win tomorrow in tonight's game. And I think we're going to be talking about, well, I don't know, Taijuan Walker, a strong bounce-back performance or a strong first performance back from the injured list. I kind of get the feeling that he's raring to go. Hopefully we'll get that tomorrow, or again, like I said, it's going to be a different conversation. But we also need to have a bigger conversation about the week ahead and what these 6 games should look like for the Philadelphia Phillies with beatable divisional opponents. We'll talk about it coming up as we wrap up today's episode. I also want to tell you about our friends over Supply House, though, because if you need supplies from the site that's made from the skilled trades, like that's supplyhouse.com. That's literally their slogan. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. If you work in any of those industries, this is the place for you. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. You can shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, and you get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Cali to Philly, doesn't matter. You can go ahead and get that done quickly with Supply House. Plus, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time you need help with an order. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supply House's Trade Master program. It's free. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, we're going to talk about the breakdown of the next 6 games for the Philadelphia Phillies. I like to break the season down. You know, if you followed me on Locked On Phillies at any extent, I try and break the season into bigger chunks than just series by series or game by game. Right now, we're in a week by week type of set because the Phillies are, they need a little bit less to chew on in this tough stretch. Real quick before we do that, I do want to remind you that, man, I'm so thankful you've made Locked On Phillies your first listen today and every day. For your second listen, I think you should check out the Locked On MLB podcast with our guy Sully, Paul Francis Sullivan. He's awesome. He's funny. He's knowledgeable. And in the dog days of summer, with pennant pushes going on, or I guess not pennant pushes, but divisional pushes going on, you need to get a bigger view of what's going on around baseball. And for that, well, Locked On MLB is available for you. They're available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. They're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, just like we are. So this week, the Phillies are facing the Marlins for 2, the Nationals for 4, and they're all at Citizens Bank Park. And I don't want to overstep because you know how I handle baseball. I don't assume the worst, but I prepare for the possible floor of what I think would be respectable. I will call out bad performances when I see them. I will call out disappointing series when I see them. But I try and set the bar in a realistic place and not get to, oh, the Phillies are better than this team, so they should beat them every time. Not how the sport works, folks. You just watched the White Sox yesterday beat the Yankees, the worst team in baseball, beating the best team in baseball. Like that's the nature of the sport. You go into football, and the worst team in the NFL matches up with the best team in the NFL. They're losing that game like 99 out of 100 times. In baseball, it might be 75 out of 100 times, but every once in a while, that other team's going to get you. So proper expectations. I'm not looking for like 6 straight wins. That'd be crazy, especially considering how the Phillies are playing right now. I also don't think it's fair to go 5-1, right? That feels a little too lofty. Like you're in a situation where, like I said, you could drop a game here or there at any point with the way this team's been playing. I'm not cutting them slack for that because they need to be playing better, but I guess in some ways I kind of am. I'm just trying to be more realistic. And I think 4-2 is the level of expectation. Do I think the Phillies can win all 6 games? Yes. This team is talented enough to win all 6 games this week, and that would be miraculous. But I don't root for miracles. Well, I do root for miracles, but I don't bank on miracles. And I don't bank on over expectations. I bank on reaching expectations and setting proper ones. And that's why, for me, I expect the Phillies to win 4 of the next 6 games at bare minimum. If you go 500 this week, that will start to be like, oh, I might be panicking. And it takes a lot for me to panic, folks. But baseline, acceptable, 4 wins, 2 losses. If I think the Phillies can win both games against the Marlins, though, that means I'm seeing a 2-2 split with the Washington Nationals, which, right, you might say, well, that doesn't sound realistic. They should win 3 of 4. Okay, I'm with you. And when you break it down by series, that's fine. But I'm doing the bigger sample size here because it accounts for a little bit of variance in, I don't know, let's say Taijuan Walker goes out tonight. It's very possible, hopefully not probable, but it's possible that he gets shelled. It's his first game back off the injured list. The offense could look good. You could lose like a 8-6 type of game tonight, and then all of a sudden 5-1 looks incredibly difficult to do this week. 4-2 is good enough. It is proper expectations, I think. It would lead to you not losing either of these series. Actually, you could get swept by the Marlins and then sweep the Nationals to get to 4-2. But I don't want to. Here's the way I see it, right? When you're coming out of a slump, and this is why I still think the Phillies are on the upslope, like I talked about yesterday, you do have to walk before you run. It's not just, oh, remember how to play baseball. This team's great again. They're beating everybody. Everything's easy. You have a good stretch, then you even that out, and then you kind of slowly work your way back to when you're winning more than you're losing. Like they just went 500 over their last 8 games. Now I'm expecting them to go over these 6 games, 2 games over 500. And then when we look at next week, we could be looking at then it's a like 5-1 type of situation, depending on how they match up and who they're playing. And we could go back to series and stuff like that. But right now, I think the proper expectations, if they go 4-2 this week, that is a great sign from the Philadelphia Phillies. That should be a sign that they're able to start winning ball games again. If they go 5-1, which I think is somewhat fair, it just feels a little lofty for me personally. We're feeling great. If they win all 6, well, hell yeah. World Series parade, back on. Let's go. It was never off, folks. It was never off. But it starts with 1 game at a time, 1 pitch at a time from Taijuan Walker, 1 at bat at a time from the Phillies hitters tonight against a pitcher they should be able to get after. And it hopefully starts with a win tonight over the Marlins. Like, we need to see one, folks. We definitely need to see this this homestand, this 6-game homestand starting out in a really, really good spot. And the only way you do that is going out and beating the Marlins tonight. I don't know. Again, let me know if I'm crazy in the comments. I know people think I'm too soft on this team. I'm too positive about this team. I'm not sitting here telling you they're great. And that's part of the reason why I'm having these lowered expectations from where I probably would be. Like earlier on in the season, in this scenario, be saying win 5. Heck, maybe win all 6. But right now, we got to, again, walk before you run. And that's why I'm dropping it down. So it's kind of like, what do you want me to do? If you want me to be less positive about this team because they're struggling, well, I'm lowering the expectations. If you want me to be less soft on this team, well, I don't know. I have to lower the expectations. If I raise them, doesn't that mean I believe more in this team than people think I should? I'm in between a rock and a hard place right now. The Phillies are as well. An easy way to get out of it, score more runs than the opposing team at Citizens Bank Park tonight. Simple, right? Well, we'll see if they can get it done. And that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. I really appreciate it. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In tomorrow's episode, we're going to be recapping tonight's game against the Marlins. It should be an interesting one. We're also going to talk about how Taijuan Walker looked in his first action back. We're also going to take a peek in at a couple of injury updates. Austin Hayes not playing with a hamstring injury. Ranger Suarez getting close to coming back. When should we expect those guys to come back to the lineup and the rotation, respectively, for the Philadelphia Phillies? So I'll give you my thoughts and what I'm hearing on that in tomorrow's episode. And we'll also look into Game 2, which is hopefully an opportunity for a sweep, a short 2-game sweep for the Philadelphia Phillies. I guess a dusting it would be. We'll talk about it. in tomorrow's episode. But again, thank you for checking us out. Oh, I almost forgot. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube like I asked you earlier on in the episode. If you like this episode, you're going to like all the episodes. We try and put out good stuff every day here on Locked On Phillies. So hit that subscribe button on the YouTube. It's free. Costs you nothing. Takes little time to do, like 3 seconds, and get you notifications when new episodes are posted. All right, folks, go Phils. Need this one tonight. Root hard from your couch, the bar, the ballpark if you're going down. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.